All right, hello. Welcome back on a Friday. I was about to say something else, but I'm like, it's a Friday. You're hearing this on a Saturday because it is the Atlanta Sports Guys. First thing on a Saturday morning. And look, the group chat was popping last night. Garrett, Chapman of 19 on the game and 247 Sports. Things were popping. Like, we were wondering what the Atlanta Hawks were going to do in the first round at pick 15 and if someone was going to get moved to this point. Because, like, there's been a plethora of NBA moves made this week where teams are getting ahead of stuff. Like, Chris Paul's now a Warrior, like Jordan Poole's a Wizard. Like, you just look out around the league and you're like, okay, there is a lot of movement happening. A lot of folks are on the trade market. Guys might be moved. And the Hawks obviously forever linked to multiple guys being moved. We were wondering if they were going to do something, and they just rushed to pick Kobe Bufkin out of Michigan, which friend of the pod and fellow Atlanta sports guy Max Markovich was ecstatic to get Bufkin in here. Garrett, first of all, how are you?
Good, man. Good. Busy. I just got my my notification. I'm going to SEC and ACC media days. So busy month of July is coming up. So I'm really excited.
Where's ACC media day?
Charlotte.
Okay.
Yeah. So
is that where the
I'm only there
headquarters is
for
now?
Georgia Tech. I'm only there for Georgia Tech because I'm covering them for 247 Sports. But SEC media days is gonna be a full week. So 4 days. 4 days.
It's in Nashville, right? This year.
Nashville. Yeah. It's Nashville. I get to go see my niece too. I get to go spend a full week with my niece. So I'm really excited about that because my brother lives up there. So really excited about that. Really excited.
Okay, there you go.
Man. Big moves, making moves, man. We're excited.
I like it. Yeah, maybe one day I'll go to those things. I've never really had any interest. I don't want to be. I'm not a big crowds guy, Garrett. I'm not a crowds guy.
Yeah, I get that feeling from you. I think you talked to, like, if you go to the bar, you're the guy who sits outside and reads a book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shit, I'm not like that. I'm like all up everywhere, meeting everybody and shaking hands. Like, I think last year I met like a dozen people that I'm still in decent contact with. Mm-hmm. So it's a great experience.
It's funny too because, like, one of the common things now, you have Ryan Russillo doing his podcast live and Split Zone doing their podcast live, and you see like that's a growing trend. And it's like live shows, and like, would I ever do? My wife asked me, it's like, would you ever do like a live show in Atlanta or in Knoxville? Like, and I thought about it for maybe half a second and was like, no. And really? She was like, why? I'm like, I don't want to be that. So like, they're gonna like, I would have to interact with so many people one on one and just be like so sociable.
You really don't. It's not that bad. So I'm gonna be up there. I'm gonna be like one of our runners, and like so I'm like gathering audio and talking to players and coaches and other people who are up there. Like, you have all the SEC folks, and I mean, you don't talk nearly as much to other people as you would think. It's a lot of like busy work too, because you're like cutting audio and doing everything like that. But you know, it's a great experience. It's a lot of fun. But if you do a live show, generally you put on the headphones and no one bothers you. So it's not like people are coming up and talking to you while you're doing on the radio or something.
Yeah.
Or I guess doing a podcast.
That's true. Maybe one day, Garrett Chapman.
We'll see.
Speaking of this live shows and just shows in general here, the Bufkin pick. Do you like what the Hawks did there? And based on your YouTube evaluations of Kobe Bufkin to this point, the lefty, long, good at getting to the rim, good slasher, seems like he could be fun with Trae finding him. But I don't know. What do you, now that you've had 12 hours to think about it, do you like the pick?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it fills a need that the Hawks had. I think does he feel like an insurance policy to you for DeJounte Murray?
It's funny you say, I wouldn't say it's insurance policy for DeJounte Murray. I think he's an insurance policy for Bogey.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. I
like
think either
Bogey
one of those
missing
guys.
30 games, Kobe's going to be expected to be that combo guard who comes in and facilitates and that sort of thing. I think
but that's what he feels like. That's what it does feel like. He's going to come in and fill that role, and it doesn't. I don't know why my gut keeps telling me this is not a dude who's going to be spending a lot of time in the G League. I expect he'll start there and play there for a couple of months, depending on, obviously, like you said, Bogey's injury situation, depending on whether or not DeJounte Murray is packaged in some sort of deal this offseason. I think there are a lot of moving parts right now, especially with that front office, and I think there's a mandate now behind closed doors. Some people said that. I don't know who said that. It was someone from ESPN.
I think it's Brendan
Windhorst said it
live, yeah.
But there's a mandate to get under the salary tax, and that doesn't surprise me at all. But right now, they are pretty substantially over that salary tax number, so I think that we're going to see that coming pretty soon, at least in the next couple of weeks. I mean, at Max last night, the text thread said, just like, hey, the next 3 months. I'm like, well, the next 3 weeks, I would say. I'd be very surprised. So I think Kobe feels a little bit like that insurance policy. He's going to come in and he's going to be a dude who can do a little bit of everything right now. We're not going to ask him to do a lot, but he can go to the rim pretty effectively. He can shoot effectively. His catch and shoot numbers are pretty good. I think he was up to like 40 some odd percent, 41%. And that's all we'd really want him to do at this point in his career. And he's a willing defender too. So that's a plus too. So because DeJounte Murray is a fine defender. I mean, I think he underperformed a little bit in that regard last year. And I think Kobe's probably has just as much upside as DeJounte does in terms of defending. Bogey, not a very good defender at all. So I think he's going to be a good depth player for the Hawks, at least early in his career. I kind of like the pick. He was one of the 3 guys that I was really interested in. Most of them had already gone. So you get a combo guy who's going to play on the wing, mostly up top as like a 2 guard, and I think that's a good pick overall.
Yeah, I think so. He was a plus player at Michigan, going through his numbers and just perusing through things. He had a big jump in his 3-point percentage in back-to-back years. 22 as a freshman, only shot 36 threes total, 121 the following year. Much bigger role. Good free throw shooter, which is the biggest indicator of what you're going to be on the NBA level. It's really not what you shoot from 3 in college. It's what you shoot from the free throw line, and he's an 85% free throw shooter. So I think at the very least he'll be a good shooter. He'll be a corner 3 guy. In the slashing stuff, we'll see where he fits in, but I think he's got to put on a lot of weight. Like, I don't know if he's going to be... Like, that's probably the earliest issue for him getting into the rotation is I think he's got to get a lot bigger. Just defending NBA guys, and he's not going to be a lead ball handler type, so he's going to be tasked to guard some bigger wings, especially if he ever plays with Trae, because they're going to hide Trae always on the easiest guy for the Hawks to defend. So he's going to have some tough assignments if he is in the rotation, just with how many talented multi-dimensional dudes there are at this point in the league. I don't know if he plays right away. Like you said, I don't see him being like a Sharif Cooper long-term Skyhawk or anything like that. No. But what I would say is like he might not have a choice if Bogey's hurt. And also, we'll see what happens with AJ Griffin and DeAndre Hunter and what the plan is there. I mean, Aaron Holiday, we'll see. Is he back? Is he under contract for next year, or is he a free agent?
I haven't looked. I really haven't looked.
But he was someone who's been in and out of the lineup. He would go into the rotation and be the first. He would be one of the 3 guards that Nate trusts, and then he would be gone for weeks at a time. I don't know. I'm very curious to see how he fits in, but at the 15th spot, I just thinking more. I was like in the group chat where I was like Cam Whitmore, because he was a really good, super talented player, top 5 pick if there weren't injury issues. But then you see, I think. There was an NBA draft guy who tweeted, like, you can't, like, a lot of teams are scared by him with his medicals because they've been burned by similar situations in the past. Yeah. So for me, that's enough where I'm like, yeah, I would still, at 15, it's like the Giannis zone where you just take flyers. I always want to just take flyers at that point where, look, take a bigger chance. You've already done the safe picks there in that range, 15 to 22 with Jalen, with John Collins, with AJ. I would have rather just them take I want my teams to take a bigger swing there. Just take a chance on somebody who may not be, like Leonard Miller or something. Like when I was talking to Jason Hart of the G League Ignite head coach last week, and he was talking about his different dudes, and what he said about Leonard was he was like, he just reminds me a lot of Lamar Odom. And I'm like, you know who'd be fun in this system? Like a Lamar Odom point forward type who can move the ball around and do different, like we haven't really had that in a long time. So something like that where it's like, I don't necessarily think that might be who he gets to. He might just be Al Harrington. I don't know. that being said, I want some more chances in that room because we have 8 or 9 deep. Like the Hawks are 8 or 9 deep right now. I would just take a chance at that spot, and I don't think Kobe is a chance. I think he'll be fine.
I think they're 8 or 9 deep right now. I think that's why they needed a high floor kind of guy, which is kind of what I see as Bufkin being. They have that right now, and they're not going to have that in a couple of weeks. So you need somebody who's going to come in and be a consistent contributor who you know what you're going to get from him. You can't have another guy. They can't afford to have another guy who's going to come in and be a potential medical concern, a potential liability of any kind. You need a dude who's going to come in and be consistent. And I understand where you're coming from, and I think if the Hawks were in more... Like, the Rockets were in a perfect situation to go take a flyer on a guy like this. What's the worst that happens? They're back in the lottery? Who cares? You take a dude, that's because he dropped the 20, and the Rockets took him there, so that's a slam dunk for them, no pun intended. I mean, it's great for them. Hawks are in a different situation where they're in flux, but they're also on the border of being a top playoff team. So they really don't have as long to kind of screw around. They need a guy who's going to come and be a positive role player. I don't see Cam necessarily as a positive role player. I see Kobe as a positive role player because that's what we've been saying about this team. Like we need guys who can come in and do specific jobs and do them well, and we didn't really have that, at least for what Quinn Snyder saw for this team. And you go get a guy who can shoot the ball effectively and play positive defense. That's great.
I would take
it's safe though, and I understand what you're saying.
I think Falcons fans. I think Hawks fans are going to be surprised that Seth Lundy gets into the rotation before Kobe Bufkin.
You think so?
Seth, 4-year guy at Penn State. He is a natural catch and shoot guy. He's long. He's already pretty filled out. He's 6'6". He's a 6'6", 220. 4-year guy at Penn State. He is 6th all time in career threes at 229 total. He shot 40% from 3 last year at Penn State. I think those older, ready to plug and play guys, those vets, the maturity's there. I think he's just someone that if injuries pop up like to a bogey or something, I would actually guess that Seth is someone who also will fit in better because I think he's just someone you can plant in the corner. He reminds me a lot of like when you watch it's like, oh, he's poor man Sadiq Bey. And Sadiq Bey played right away and was an important player. And I'm a big Sadiq Bey believer here in Atlanta. But I think if I had to pick who's more likely to make an earlier impact, I actually think it's Seth. I think we see Seth in the Hawks rotation before Kobe.
6'6" wing, 37% three-point shooting. I mean, I hear what you're saying. He's one of the older prospects. There's a reason he stuck around in college as long as he did.
But those guys play right away in the NBA.
Sure, sometimes. Yeah. I mean, maybe. I mean, like he could come in but he fills a role, and that's the biggest thing which you have in the second round. And that's something that the Hawks have missed on for years. Years and years is the second round picks. And it's to the point now where it's like people like me, even I was doing this. It's like, oh, it's a second round pick. Who cares? Like just trade it away, do something else. Who cares? It's just an asset to get rid of. Because we whiffed on what was the last second round pick that we drafted that actually amounted to really anything? Was it
Pop Psy?
No, I would say what's that center's name? Shoot, he's not here anymore.
Pero Antic?
No, not Pero. Did we draft Pero?
I feel like we drafted Pero.
I thought we signed him.
Maybe he was just a signing.
I thought we signed him. No, it's shoot, he's the center that we had in like 2016 or something.
2016.
Bembry?
Who?
Bembry?
That's a wing, DeAndre Bembry.
Not DeAndre Bembry. No, I don't know. But
DeAndre Bembry did play. What was DeAndre Bembry?
He was about it. I don't know. But there was a center that we had.
He was first.
Say what?
DeAndre Bembry was the 21st pick.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about the NBA draft is it dries up so quickly.
Yeah.
There's always one or two guys later on outside of the lottery who turn into all NBA careers. Every now and then, who have like a 1 or 2 great seasons or maybe they're an all-star or something once or twice, but then for the most part, it's pretty dry. But the point is, it's like the Hawks have whiffed.
Amari Spellman.
That's it, Spellman. Yeah, he's the only one who I could think of, and I couldn't even remember his name. That shows how much of an impact player he was, I guess. But look, it's a second-round pick. I have a low level of expectations for these guys. I mean, but he comes in and he satisfies a need, And here, like, if he can come in and be like a Kyle Korver, not necessarily shoot at that volume, but a guy who can come in and shoot threes effectively and then go sit down on the bench, fine. I'll take that. That's 100. I'll take that to the bank.
Oh, I have the best second-round pick in Hawks history.
Who is it?
You ready?
Let's go.
Mike Scott.
Mike Scott. King.
Mike Scott that man was a bucket.
I love that dude.
Mike Scott was my dude. And I also I played with him.
I didn't know he was a second-round pick.
He was a second-round pick.
How about that? Chase Thomas coming in with the heat.
Yeah. Oh, man. Now I'm just remembering some guys. Remember how excited I was about the AC Law?
I remember being excited about all these guys. Actually, one dude who I was very, very surprised who didn't get drafted, who I thought would, is Oscar Tshiebwe from Kentucky. Yeah. He's a dude who, and Drew Timmy too from Gonzaga.
Yeah,
both of those guys didn't get drafted, and that is very interesting to me. Very interesting because Tshiebwe can come in and he's a walking rebound.
Yeah,
and he's a little undersized, but he's physical and he's very strong. He'd be a dude to go put on a 2-way contract. I'll take that. He's probably already signed somewhere, if I'm being honest. But I just haven't.
That's a good question. He also didn't go back. He could have just come back to Kentucky for a nice NIL payday for that final year, and he didn't come back. So I wonder if that was the right move for him. But
you never know.
Yeah,
you never know.
We'll see.
Tshiebwe feels like he's been there for like 4 or 5 years now. That's all.
He's been there for a long time. But he also was a transfer, remember? So yeah, I don't know. We shall see. Garrett, last thing on the Hawks. Are you surprised they haven't moved anyone? Like, I threw in the group chat where I'm like, Jalen for DeJounte and DeAndre. Because, like, I forgot where it was that, like, DeAndre popped up. Was it Jake Fisher, maybe, of Yahoo Sports, where DeAndre might be available and he's someone to monitor, I think, in the last couple weeks because everything just happened so quickly. But ultimately, I think you and Max know where I stand on the DeAndre Hunter thing, where it's like if he's healthy, it's great. Like if you could turn injuries off like it's 2K, then I would keep him in my long-term plans. But you just can't. And if we get like, I'm more of an AJ Griffin guy. I'm more of a Sadiq Bey guy. I would really, really prefer they roll with those two playing 30-plus minutes a night next season at the 3 and the 4. But we'll see if that ultimately ends up happening. But I don't know. Do you still see something happening this summer with them? And do you think it's something big where they take a big swing for Jalen? Because the Boston Celtics are active. I mean, Marcus Smart's a Grizzly, and I never would have guessed they would have moved on from Marcus Smart.
Did not think that was going to happen.
No. So clearly there is some possibilities of the Boston Celtics moving more guys than we might have imagined they would have moved. But I don't know. Where are you at with some of the always rumored John Collins movement potentially for Atlanta?
So the Hawks are probably one of the more interesting teams in the NBA, and not just because I cheer for them, but it's no one on that core. No one on their core is older than 30. All right, 6 will be 25, and all 6 of those guys are due $18-ish million next year. Like we're absolutely way over the cap, but this is also a 41-41 team that, sure, I mean it was a mediocre team under Nate McMillan. They underperformed. Quinn Snyder came in and tried to do what he could, I guess, and I still expect the moves to be made because they're over the cap, and I don't think that this is the final form of what Quinn Snyder sees for this team. I also don't completely buy his comment saying that Landry Fields has final say on the roster construction. I think that's a little silly if he expects us to think that. I think Landry Fields has a pretty large opinion, but I feel like Quinn Snyder is going to be the guy who has final say. Outside of course, your owner, who is already mandated to get under the salary cap, which we'll see. I mean, that mandate, if true, I'm assuming it is, because they did it last year too. If that's the case, then they're absolutely making a move. There's no question about it. It's just, I think the question doesn't become if they'll make a move. It's will they get the proper value in return. I know you pontificated the idea of what you said for Jaylen Brown, DeJounte Murray, and DeAndre Hunter. Would you do it? Of course I would do that, but would they do it? No, probably not. It doesn't make any sense for them to do it necessarily. Maybe they do because they just lost a Marcus Smart, a guy who DeJounte Murray can come in and be that guy. They need a lead guard
to help in the half court. Like clearly they need some sort of lead ball handler there.
But that's the thing. It's like you would bring DeJounte Murray in to do that on a 1-year deal, and but he's not going to re-sign with you. Probably.
I don't know. He might resign there.
You never know, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect he would. I think he would play a little bit better with a guy like Jason Tatum anyway. I think that Jason Tatum could take the ball up every now and then, but I think that would make more sense. And DeAndre Hunter, I guess, would fit into what they do pretty effectively. He'd just be kind of like a role player, and I think that's good for him.
Yeah.
On the flip side, it's like, I just don't see how that happens. I don't know if that's enough value. I mean, maybe if that's your core group, and then you involve a third team and send some picks around somewhere.
Pritchard probably needs to come to Atlanta now, and then the money is actually 100% right, and Pritchard wants out too, and you get a third, fourth guard, just another guard. Who cares?
Yeah, you just figure something out, make the money work or something. But ultimately, no, there's going to be a move. It's going to be a move, and I just want to make sure that we get the value back. John Collins has been in the rumor mill for forever, 3 seasons now, and I feel like it's good for him if we just officially just cut bait. I love John Collins as a player. I love John Collins as a person. I've met him multiple times, and every time he's been just the same great dude, and I want nothing but the best for the dude, but at the same time, I don't see the fit here in Atlanta. He doesn't shoot the ball very effectively. He has that thumb, or the whatever, that finger that's been messing with him for a long time. He plays okay defense, but the thing is, he doesn't play a good enough defense for me to be like, all right, he has to stay here. He's a good leader, but it's like you can replace leadership with other players. And I think he's a dude who needs the ball in his hands to make things happen, and you don't want that when you have such ball dominance elsewhere on the court already. So if you send John Collins somewhere, I think that's a logical conclusion. I think either Onyeka Okongwu or Clint Capella, I would imagine, would be going. I would like to keep both of them because that pair is the best center duo in the NBA. But look, I can't imagine how we keep both of them. Onyeka Okongwu's due a contract soon. Clint Capella is a pretty decent trade chip. We already talked about Bogi Bogdanovic. He could be a trade chip. I don't think he's going to be I don't think he's I don't know. We talked about this like a few weeks ago. I don't think he's tradable until December, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's part of if there's no big move this offseason, if he then becomes something like you package him with DeJounte Murray and send him off somewhere to get recoup some of the assets that you lost with the DeJounte Murray trade. But look, there are going to be moves that happen for the Atlanta Hawks. I'm very interested to see what happens. I think it's going to be a very active next couple of weeks. I hope that it happens sooner rather than later, because if this doesn't happen in the next week, the Hawks aren't going to be able to be active in free agency, at least not in the way that we want them to be.
I don't think they're going to be active either way. Like, who makes sense in free agency to the Hawks right now? Like, who? What? Like, I don't want them
role
to do
players.
anything.
You're going to find role players. I mean,
well, part of it is like I don't even know how to
know who's out there.
forecast.
I haven't even looked. But I mean,
Well, it's a pretty bad free agent class. But I also just don't even know how you approach free agency if you haven't decided on what you're going to do with John Collins. And the people...
but that's what I'm saying. Like, you have to figure out who's going to be on this roster and who's not. I don't think that there's any clear direction right now. This team doesn't have an identity. I mean, if anybody can answer that question for me, I've been asking this question for weeks. What is the identity of the Atlanta Hawks?
Can I tell you what it should be? With Quinn Snyder
sure.
here? I mean, it should be pick and roll and 3 shooters. Like, pick and roll over and over again with Clint Capella and Trae, and then 3 shooters around him. That's
beautiful.
It. That's it.
I think that's great. I think that then that's a Hawks team that can win 50-plus games.
Yes. Like, AJ Griffin in the corner on one side, Sadiq Bey in the corner on another, and then DeJounte just off-ball cutting. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that we could play off of that and turn this into a pretty good team.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, that's not the identity of this team. So
John Collins, and I love John.
And there you go.
It's
addition by subtraction, and that's not a knock on John Collins. I'm not saying he's a bad basketball player. I'm not saying he's bad for this team. I'm saying it's just with the new philosophy, I don't see a role for him, and his value is at an all-time low. And the fact that they didn't trade him years ago is a disservice to him. It's a disservice to this Hawks team.
Yeah. I don't know. I keep saying, like, this actually makes the most sense to move John Collins this summer than any of the other times.
Well, sure, it's increased in priority as we've gone along, but
they actually have
his
other
value
options.
Is so much lower. That's all I'm saying. Like, it makes the most sense to make the deal now, but the fact that they haven't made it already is not good.
No, and I would be way more surprised if they moved Clint than JC, and I'm also someone who I don't understand why people.
I don't think it's an either or though. I don't think it's an either or. I think.
Well, I think the Hawks know they have to move one of the two because that's what's popping up all summer. If you've been keeping up with the rumor mill and seeing names, it's like the Mavericks prioritized Capella more than John Collins, and now he's linked to Utah. Like, there's a lot of teams that I think are interested in Capella. Like, I think the Hawks know they can't, or at least Quinn especially, based on what we've seen thus far, is like Clint Capella or Quinn Snyder does not want to go into a year with 2 non-shooters in his starting lineup again.
It's just a lot of smoke. It's all smoke. I'll believe it when I see it. I've been hearing John Collins is destined to be traded for. I was told he was going to be traded draft day last year. There was all but certain that it was going to happen, and then it was all but certain he was going to be traded at the until I see the report, and it is confirmed by the Atlanta Hawks. I'm not going to buy anything. I don't believe anything until it's confirmed by the Hawks. It's just I can follow. I've been following these rumors for years, and until something happens and actually turns into something, I can't buy any of it.
Here's what I think ultimately happens. I think it's Rudy Gay and Kelly Olynyk for John Collins.
What? Talk about the biggest meh. I don't know. I have no idea what it's going to be. I don't know what his value is anymore.
I don't think it's high.
I don't think it's very high.
Love JC, but it's time for him to move on. The Falcons. Interesting piece on the Falcoholic with highlighting something that Phil Yates of ESPN was wondering about with this group. For you, Garrett, do you think the limited depth at wide receiver will ultimately doom the Falcons from reaching their full capabilities in 2023?
No, it's not the wide receiver core that's going to doom the Falcons. Because I think pieces like this look at the wide receiver room and think that it's a zero-sum thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as if you don't have the guy who's labeled as a wide receiver, then he doesn't exist on this roster. Look, I respect all of these national pundits, but they don't know the Atlanta Falcons as well as we do. They just don't. And I mean that with all due respect, because these are very smart guys. They know the league better than I do, significantly better than I do. I know the Atlanta Falcons better than they do. You know, Bijan Robinson is a wide receiver for this team, or he's a pass catcher. Cordero Patterson is going to be a pass catcher. Kyle Pitts is going to be a pass catcher. That's not the thing that's going to doom the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, they lost Calvin Ridley. Yeah, they lost Olamide Zaccheaus. I mean, come on. Look. It's not about the wide receiver position. It's about, can Desmond Ridder play mistake-free football? Can he hand the ball off effectively? Is Bijan Robinson everything he expected? Is this offensive line going to continue progressing? Is Bergeron the guy who we expect him to be at left guard, assuming he wins the job? More importantly, the defense. Can they rush the passer? Can they sack the quarterback at a higher clip that's more than, 20 times? Like, if they can get more than 20 sacks next year, geez, that'd be like, a career high over the last couple of years. You know, I think that's really going to be the big key for the Falcons this year. Not the wide receiver core. That's like number 5 on the list for me. Like, that's not even remotely close. Is Jeff Okudah going to be a strong second option at cornerback? Is Troy Anderson ready to take the next step and lead this team in tackles? Is Arnold Ebiketie going to take the next step and reach double-digit sacks? That's all far more important to me than if the wide receiver position behind Drake London is worth the half damn. That's so low on the list to me because the wide receiver 2 on this team is not a wide receiver. It's Kyle Pitts. Like, it's ridiculous. I just think it's a little silly. That's all.
I think they're right in terms of if the Falcons find themselves in a, like, I'm trying to think who in the NFC. I think maybe a little bit more concerned if it was the AFC. Just because of the elite quarterbacks.
Well, the AFC is a lot better than the NFC is. I mean,
I just think it's a lot more high octane offenses, right? Like, you have the best the best wide receiver grouping 2 years in a row is in Cincy with Boyd, with Jamar Chase, with
it's elite.
T. Higgins.
And then you go down to the Dolphins with Waddle,
Jalen Waddle and Hill. Like, there's dudes, Stephon Diggs in Buffalo. Like, there are dudes everywhere. So you're going to have to be able to throw the football around to win the AFC. The NFC, I'm looking at it. I'm like, I think the Cowboys have a really good receiver room. Dak's probably my best quarterback in the NFC right now. And then, I think it's Dak. Who would you have above Dak right now?
Jalen Hurts.
No. Jalen Hurts probably 2 or 3, though.
I think Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than Dak Prescott.
I think if you asked around the league if you could have him straight up, contracts are the exact same. I think
he's due $55 million. No,
what
I'm just going to disagree. We're going to agree to disagree. I want to stay on topic here. Dak is not my best quarterback in the NFC, though. We can agree to disagree there.
Yeah. I will say, you look at it, there isn't depth. Like, they're not wrong that, like, this is a different way of trying to win. Like, it's not like the Titans wide receiver room, which is just god-awful, but it's also, they're an injury to away from, like, low-key disaster on that front, where it's like, who's going to be catching balls?
But
where it's
you
like,
can't assume injuries. I mean, you understand that people are going to get banged up, but they're paper thin at wide receiver.
Like, if Drake London goes down, if Drake London, God forbid, goes down, this receiver room, I mean, you might be looking at weeks where it's like Mac Hollins, Frank Darby, Scotty Miller as your receiver. Like, that's the worst trio in the league if that happens. Like, that is literally the worst in the league. So there is some concern there where, like, they need certain guys. Like, Kyle Pitts and Drake London need to be healthy. Like, that's just...
Yeah, and we're assuming that Kyle Pitts comes back healthy.
Yes.
And is Kyle Pitts, you know?
Yeah. And if he is, that blots a lot of this out. But I will say, I think the Falcons, I would still prefer they bring in one more wideout. Like, I would prefer one more upgrade at the slot spot. I would prefer, you're not going to be able to trade for Hunter Renfrow if they don't want to get traded, but like, or the Raiders don't want to trade for him. But I'm like, I do think the Falcons should have been a little bit more active in bringing in one more guy in this receiver room.
I mean, they got guys out there. Do you go get DeAndre Hopkins? I don't think that's someone that they're interested in.
I want a third down safety net. Like, I want someone I can trust who can make Desmond Ritter's life a lot easier.
Kyle Pitts?
I mean, Kyle Pitts is one.
Sure. I mean, I think Drake London's going to be that dude, too. I mean, I think Scotty Miller is going to be a little bit better than some people think. I think he's going to be a
lot from him right now.
Say?
They need a lot from him right now. Like, a lot.
No, they're going to be asking a lot from him. But Bijan Robinson, Cordero Patterson, those are dudes who are also going to fill that role.
Yeah.
You know? You have, I'm blanking on his name. Shoot. The tight end who we just brought in.
Jonnu Smith.
Jonnu Smith is another one of those guys who can fill that role. We can just edit that little bit out right there.
No, that's okay. No, but maybe it's Felipe Franks.
But Jonnu Smith is another guy who could come in and catch the football in third downs and red zone situations. I think they've got some guys. I see what you're saying. Go pull in some another talented dude. I don't know who's out there who's going to be able to jump out. I mean, maybe they can go get someone who gets cut from the roster. Maybe there's another roster casualty come fall camp or something. But
you know who's out there that I would do? I would either go T.Y. Hilton. He still showed some stuff for the Cowboys last year. Not a lot in the tank left, just a little.
I don't know what he has left.
Jarvis Landry, I wouldn't hate just taking a flyer on.
Jarvis Landry, I don't know how much he has left.
I would just take a flyer. Give me somebody else that I could.
Camp. I mean, that would surprise.
Give me some camp invites. Give me some options here. I'm just a little nervous. They get down. Like, this is a team I'm very curious to see how they play down.
But it's not. I see what you're saying. Like, they're paper thin, but it's not something that's like a 9-1-1. Like, it's going to doom the Falcons. Sure. I mean, you could say, okay, if Drake London gets hurt, yeah, like it would be a big hit to the Falcons. You could say that about a half dozen teams in the NFL. If Tyreek Hill gets hurt, that really screws up the plans for the Miami Dolphins next year. If Travis Kelce gets hurt, that really screws up plans for what Kansas City can do. You can make this argument. Stephon Diggs gets hurt. It screws up plans. Of course it does. Because
what helps having Josh Allen?
Well, yeah, it certainly does. And in our case, it helps to have the best rushing attack in the NFL. So
I think the Niners are still probably there.
Niners are right there. But I mean, like, look, we're right up there with all of them. I mean, we're going to be a pretty damn good rushing attack this year. And so it's not going to doom the Falcons. That's why it's like looking at the roster right now and saying, like, that's going to be the reason. It could be one of the reasons, sure. I mean, but I'm not willing to hit the panic button. This is not a team that's going to be throwing the ball 40 times a game either. Like, we ran at a very high clip last year. I don't think we'll run quite as much as we did last year. Like, we had the one time where we ran the ball, 16 times in a row. I don't see that happening again this year because we have a competent quarterback, I'd say, or at least more so than Marcus Mariota was. And the Falcons will be a little bit more balanced in terms of that, like at least more league normal. Like they're not going to run it. They're not going to run the ball more than they pass, I don't think. But you're still not going to really throw the ball more than 30 times a game, right?
I just think it'll be fascinating. This is a team that I don't want to be in this spot, but I'm very fascinated to see what the Falcons look like down 28-7 at the half.
I don't think this doesn't strike me as a team that is going to be down 28-7 at the half.
This defense might be pretty bad.
The defense is a big question mark. Like, that's the thing. I think the defense has so much variability. We talked about this a few weeks ago when Max was on the pod with us.
Yeah.
It has potential to be like a 15-20 off a defense. Like right there in scoring
30th,
defense and
31st.
But that's on the other side of the coin. What happens if these guys don't take the next step? Like, what happens if they missed on Arnold Ebiketie? What happens if D'Angelo Malone doesn't do anything and Calais Campbell just has nothing left in the tank and Grady Jarrett is right back in that same situation where he's the only dude on the defensive line who's worth a half damn, and they just double team him and they just kill you? What happens if Jeff Okudah really was just kind of a bum and the Lions traded him for pocket change or at least the lint in the bottom of your pocket? Like, what if they were right and we were wrong? Well, sure, we'd probably bottom out and be a pretty bad defense.
And also, Ryan Nielsen might just be worse than Dean Pease.
Maybe. I mean, that could also be true. They've invested a lot more money and capital into this defense, so I'm assuming that it's going to be better. But if I kind of see this as like a high 20s, as in like 20, 21, 22, 23. That's really where I see this defense falling. I think its ceiling is like 15, 16, but its floor is pretty damn low, worse than the NFL low. Yeah. So, but I think ultimately,
that's the difference between him and Pease,
you can hide a bad defense a little bit with an offense like the one we have.
That's kind of the difference between Pease and Nielsen to me, based on everything I've read and like reading Saints folks talk about him, and it's just gonna be a boom or bust thing. Like, it's gonna be way more aggressive than what we've seen the last 2 years. Where the last 2 years, it's been like the reason the Falcons have been in games is because he just plays very conservative. Dean Pease
just make him matriculate the ball down the field.
Yeah. That's not what's going to happen this year. I think they're going to be more aggressive. I think they're going to try and get after quarterbacks.
Well, I think they can afford to be more aggressive this year.
Well, we'll see with the secondary. We'll see if it holds up, or if you do go super aggressive and you have a bunch of one-on-one situations with Hughes and maybe Cornell Armstrong and other guys. It's like, okay, well, we still can't be as aggressive as we like because we're putting a lot of guys who just can't handle it in one-on-one situations.
Well, Chase, but this is also what we're looking at right now. We're not looking at a Super Bowl contender necessarily. Like, this isn't a team that's going to... This isn't the San Francisco 49ers. This isn't the Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs, whatever.
But, I mean,
guys who have very few holes. We have holes. We have holes. This is why we play in the worst. We play in the worst division in the NFL, and I think that we're at a 10-win team in the worst division in the NFL. Do you know what that means? That means we have holes. It means we're not a perfect team. I think we'll win a lot more games than we did last year. That doesn't mean that we won't have issues. I think we'll have plenty of issues. I think that the positives and the strengths are going to be enough to outweigh a lot of those negatives. But we got some question marks, man. I think this is going to be a really interesting season. And I have expectations for the team this year just because they went out and spent some of that money. But it's a lot of one-year deals still. It's a lot of dudes who may not be here next year anyway. So it's a rental, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. They can go out and make deals next year too. So I think they've got the building blocks in place, and that's really the most important thing as they continue to build this team. I'm excited to see where it goes, assuming that the bottom doesn't fall out. Because if the bottom falls out, then we have a different problem. But I'm not ready to say that yet. I'm confident in this team.
We should be at this point. It's June 23rd.
We should be.
Let's be confident for a
Everyone has no losses, no wins. Everyone's 0-0.
There you go.
Anything is possible.
I don't want to yell. Austin Riley, do you think he's finally getting settled in that 3 spot? Because he hasn't been an all-star all year. He's kind of had a quiet, down year, down by Austin Riley standards, we should say. Or he's been fine. I wonder, are we in for a big Austin Riley June? Or July, really?
Weather heats up. I mean, we saw what he did in July of last year, right before he got that big old contract. After getting the contract, he really wasn't all that great. I mean, he was not good by Austin Riley standards, but he was still pretty good by Major League Baseball standards.
Yeah.
He's got a very good chance of being the starting third baseman in the All-Star game, and we're talking about how he's struggling right now.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of that has to do with the fact that the Braves are the best team in baseball, and because it's third base, and Nolan Arenado's not really playing very well, so I don't put too much stock into the All-Star game voting necessarily, but it does show that he has respect around the majors, and it's mostly because he's earned it, and I think we've got a big month coming for him. I don't think that we've seen the best that the Braves have to offer as far as like they've really gotten hot. They've won 8 games in a row. They're really, really damn good. Austin Riley in general, though, he's been struggling a little bit. I think his numbers actually show that he was getting a bit lucky. I think his batting average of balls in play was 305 or something like that. But we've also seen it's just so up and down. It's just so up and down for him. But I think we've got a hot month coming for him.
His WRC plus is 100. League average is 100.
Yeah.
Like, you look at it, it just goes back to, like, I think Kevin Keneally on Twitter had Austin Riley is now hitting 148 with a 284 OBP and an OPS under 600 this season with runners in scoring position. That's tough. And like you said, he's the leading vote getter for the third baseman. Sorry, he's not. He's
a finalist.
We've seen the best version, right? Where it's like, I think Ryan McMahon's had a better year. I might probably go Ryan McMahon, who had a good series in Atlanta. He had a big dinger and get off Charlie Morton early. But I don't think it matters. Like, so much of what the Braves to me this year, and I'm excited to dive fully in now that the Tennessee Volunteers have been eliminated in the College World Series, made it the Final Five. Everything School HQ. So we're
great game last night, by the way.
That was a great game. But it is kind of wild. Like, Paul Skeens I don't know if he's going to be able to pitch in the finals, which is hilarious because of the way the College World Series goes. So they don't give a break in between. So you have to
just 3 days in a row.
Yeah. Well, he can't keep going. Like, these guys, their arm, like, Paul Skeens might not be available for LSU Florida, which would be a shame. But when you look at the Braves right now with this whole lineup, and every night I look at it and I'm like, it's just Ronald Acuna is so good that, like, everything else doesn't bother me as much as it would if Ronald Acuna was an average player. Where Ronald Acuna is covering up this season in particular so much for a lineup that has been painfully average across the board. Like, it's just Matt Olson's not a number 2 guy. He's still got the power. He's going to always be in that top of the home run group. The Braves having their system, we talk about systems, like, just always going to lead the NL or Major League Baseball, be around that top 3 in homers during this era, is going to keep them in most games. It's going to make you think that they're never completely out. Like, getting stuff out of Albies, he's still got it at 116 WRC plus. You look at Eddie Rosario, he's doing just enough. Sean Murphy, just enough. Orlando Arcia being awesome at the bottom. Like, Michael Harris not being Michael Harris all year long. A lot of that's injuries, but not really getting anything from him offensively. I don't know. I look at it where I'm like, a lot of these guys are doing just enough to keep this thing humming. But in terms of Acuna, it's just, the season is Acuna. Acuna is just so much better than everyone else, and it's not even particularly close, that it just makes life easier. It's like, why am I complaining? You have the best player in the NL right now.
Yeah, you do. I mean, you've got the NL MVP.
Yeah.
You've also got a guy who has a claim to be NL MVP runner-up, or at least he's going to finish top 5 in the voting, Sean Murphy. But you used the word average to describe the Braves' offense. I think that is far from what this offense has been so far this season.
Elite home runs, average play up and down.
No, I'd say like they're
who's been above average all year long?
They're the best lineup in baseball.
No. I'm saying individually, who has had an above average year?
Sean Murphy, Ronald Acuna, Orlando Arcia, Matt Olson.
I think Orlando Arcia is probably right here.
Orlando Arcia has a 132 OPS plus.
Yeah.
Like, that's very good.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Olson's been pretty good. I mean, he had the strikeouts, but then he's also like one of the best in baseball in terms of RBI.
Yeah.
The only person who's better than him is Ozzie Albies, who's also on this roster.
Love
who
Ozzie.
he flip-flopped with. You have a bunch of interchangeable parts. Like, you have Marcell Ozuna, who we were seconds away from cutting. And now he was batting .076. And a month later, he now has a 113 OPS plus. Michael Harris missed like a month of the season and started just slumping And then you saw what he did last week. He goes out on a scorcher. And he's still, like, really getting up, like, to where he should be. Austin Riley's been struggling, but he's in the 3-hole, and he'll turn around, and we'll have a big month from him here soon. But, no, this is the best lineup in baseball. Like, I just don't see any way around it. They've protected a struggling starting pitching staff. Someone that's just trying to make ends meet, just with all of the injuries that they've had in the rotation. And the lineup is pretty potent.
I would say the
and
best.
They can beat you anywhere 1 through 9.
The Rays are clearly the best lineup in baseball, I would say. I think it's the Rays.
I don't know.
I don't know what I think it's the Rays. And then Texas has a claim there, too.
Texas is pretty good. A team that the Braves beat.
Yeah. Braves are somewhere in the top 5. Across the board.
Top 5. I think they are comfortably in the top 5. I think they are comfortably the best in the National League. At least they have been, at least at this point in the season.
Yeah, they're probably. I guess the only other competition really in the NL is the Dodgers.
The Diamondbacks? I think the Diamondbacks have had a pretty great season. Corral is one of those dudes playing outfield, and he has a great claim to be Rookie of the Year and MVP. He's having a great year. I don't expect that to continue necessarily.
Do you know what's wild?
In June, but
only 2 of the 10 best offenses in baseball are in the NL.
Yeah, well, the American League is the class of Major League Baseball right now. Just look at the AL East and look at what they've been doing. They've just had a spectacular start to the season. We got a long way to go. But no, the Braves are far from average. I think Ronald Acuna is special. I think he does things. He's already got 32 stolen bases. Like, how incredible is that? Like, he's second in Major League Baseball. I think I don't know who the other guy is. I forget. I think he plays for the A's or something. But he's beating him in stolen bases. But it's like, that's all he does. Ronald Acuna also is hitting for average this year. He's getting on base 40% of the time. Dude is out of his mind good right now. But he's just getting on base, and he's hitting singles too, which I think is the thing that I've liked the most. Is Ronald Acuna specifically is just taking what the pitcher is giving him, and he's getting on base. And I think earlier in his career, I think he was trying to overpower the baseball and really kill it. And I think this year he's just sort of understanding that, like, hey, I'm really freaking fast. I'm gonna get on first base. I'm gonna steal second base, and then I can score from first if I need to anyway.
He's just like figured out baseball. Like, I don't know what his weakness is. What's Ronald Acuna's weakness?
Well, it's not even Ronald Acuna. It's everybody. This entire team is still growing up. Like, we talk about these guys as if they're 28, 29, 30, 31. Like, they're like in the midst of their prime. Ronald Acuna's 25. Like, Orlando Arcia is really only been a pro for a few years. He's only been a starter for like 2 years, one of which has come here this year in Atlanta. Ozzy's 26. Like, Austin Riley's 26. Michael Harris is 22. He's played 1 calendar year of baseball. So we're talking about this team as if it's a finished product. Like, no, this team is only going to get better over the next couple of years.
Yeah,
and they have this year. I mean, you look at what they did last year. They led they led Major League Baseball in home runs, or they led the National League. I think they're right up there at the top. But they were also leading in strikeouts. And it's the inverse this year. They're leading Major League Baseball in home runs, and if they're not on top, they're right there in the top. But they're like 10th in strikeouts this year. That's huge. They're striking out at a much lower clip, and they're getting on base, and they're hitting the ball more effectively, and then putting the ball in play, making things happen. And there's a reason they have the best record in the National League, and that's why they're running away with the National League East right now.
I like it. Garrett Chapman, what can the good folks check out from you over on 99 The Game and 247 Sports this week?
We're continuing with the official visits. I still got these freaking flies from last week. I'm telling you, they keep coming back. I don't know where they keep coming from. But no, we have the official visits continue through the weekend. Georgia Tech keeping me very busy. It's the end of the month for official visits and the class of 2024. So we're moving into the class of 2025 coming up here in a few weeks. And then 247 Sports at 92.9. I get my jobs confused. I got so many of them. 92.9. We got Atlanta United tomorrow night, so we're really excited about that. And they got more shows on Sunday, so looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
There you go, Garrett Chapman. Always a pleasure. Max, miss you this week. Maybe get Max Markovich back next week. Who knows?
Maybe.
It's tough getting these Padea pythons on here, but there you go. Garrett.
Oh, they're paladins.
I thought they were pythons. Didn't we learn they were
they're
pythons?
paladins.
No. Didn't Max say they were pythons?
It's a paladin.
No, hold on.
I'm like
Paideia-
95% sure.
Hold on. The Paideia School, Python Park. Okay, hold on. I may be wrong here. No, Paideia. What did you say it was? Paladins?
Yeah, paladins.
Hold on. This is good. ATL only. I think you might be right. Well, actually, hold on. No, it's not. No, they're not the Paladins.
What are they?
They're the Pythons.
Are they the pythons?
Yeah,
All right. Well.
I was right. They are the
Credit to you,
Pythons.
sir. Credit to you, sir.
Look at me. You have me second guessing it. No, they're the Pythons. Coming at me for my Atlanta knowledge.
Hey, man. That's what I do.
I might not be there anymore, but I still have it. It's locked away. Corey Kale Classic. Let's go. Garrett Chapman, always a pleasure. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next week.